Let's just talk accessories a little bit for if somebody's going to build up a bolt gun for competition. I just know in the last 5-6 years there's been a ton of new accessories hitting the market. So like besides a scope, what's the most important thing to have on a competition bolt gun?
So, I mean, the first, and I'll let Dan talk about some of the crucial pieces that we have, but it's really easy to get caught up because there's a million different accessories, and you see like some of the the top level guys, and I'm as guilty as the next. I've got a bunch of gear, but that's not what makes me a good shooter. Some guys come into their first matches and they think, well, I gotta buy all the gear. Honestly, you don't. You don't need all the gear. You're gonna become a better foundational shooter by having your rear bag and a quality scope and your bipod and just run. On top of that, there's a ton of different gear that Dan and I are always chatting about. What we're using.
There's always this wave, like when you first get in, you get like this basic rifle. Well, for most part, for most people, and then you see somebody else have, and then you're like, well, if I buy that, I'm gonna get 5 extra points for the match because it's gonna make me shoot that much better. And then everybody goes through this, like everybody does it. They get a rifle, and then all of a sudden, within 6 months, a year or two, then they have like the most expensive stuff or all this gear, and then you see them, a year after that or 6 months after that. Sometimes it's even shorter time frame where they've eliminated all that extra gear and they're back to kind of a standard, just running a good action, either a good chassis or a good stock, and kind of almost back to the basics. A lot of that gear just kind of gets in the way and slows people down. But when you first start, people are like, oh, I gotta get a Kestrel and all these bags and all this stuff.
And guys get so hung up over what they're seeing the other competitors have with them instead of, okay, well, he's actually over there, spending all his time behind a spotter. Like, what's he doing? He's always looking at the wind. He's looking at the mirage.
Yeah.
He's paying attention to the other shooters, how they're attacking or how they're approaching this stage, and he may or may not have a whole slew of gear, but that's not the
It doesn't
focus.
And money
and
to look through a scope, right?
Exactly.
And to that experience of watching a trace of a round, the impact, seeing the wind at, if you got a shot, you have to engage a target at 1,000 yards. You're looking at the wind at 3, 5, 7, 900 yards. Could be different at each one of those distances and at different magnitudes, and that doesn't cost money. I mean, you got to buy a spotting scope, or there's almost always extra spotting scopes around. People don't care. The sport's really friendly in the sense that you can jump behind somebody else's spotting scope and watch somebody shoot, and that doesn't cost you money. You don't have to go buy all these extra bags and all this other junk that's really doesn't buy any points.
Yeah, and that experience makes you a better shooter, and that experience doesn't run out of batteries and doesn't break.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah. There's all these other tools can help if you know how to use them correctly, but it's the basics of being able to look through glass and reading mirage or the grass, how it's blowing, or the dust, and looking at that and go, I know that's a 7 mile an hour wind left to right, and I know at X amount of yards, I know I need to hold this much for the wind correction, and you can't buy that, right?
Yeah.
You can't buy that.
Yeah. And the sport's just incredible how much people are willing to share all their stuff, and some people have the financial ability to just buy whatever they want and then figure out what works in their kit later, and others just borrow all of our stuff. Like it's awesome. It's awesome community, lots of good guys. If you were to say just a few pieces of equipment that I personally couldn't do without, and I wasn't able to rely on Dan having it in his pack or one of the other shooters in the squad, it was just me out there practicing shooting by myself, and I had to have all my own gear. I'm going to have a quality rear bag that is big enough but pliable enough to be useful as a small bag and use the corner, or as a big bag to build it up. A tripod, for me, a tripod and being able to use it to spot, or use it as a supporting structure, like using the leg, is huge. Best in the business is Really Right Stuff, one right here, but you don't need a Really Right Stuff tripod. You can get any tripod in the world and figure out the fundamentals of how to use it and why to use it, and throw your cheap spotter on it to be able to take a look at the wind. And then third, I'd probably say as a backup bag, something like the Reezer Game Changer, or similar style. There's some other really great ones by like Weebad, their Fortune Cookie. It's a bag that is a little bit larger, but it has a heavy fill, so you can basically plop the thing on any fence post, any rock, anywhere, and it's not going anywhere. It's not shifting, like Dan said. So I don't know if there would be anything else that you'd add on to that.
For me, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing in the world that people were paying like $300 for a bipod. When I first started, I'm like, why would you ever? I've got a $40 bipod. It holds my gun up, and I had no clue until I started shooting bolt guns a lot, realizing why people pay $300 for a bipod, because it just does so many other things. And when you're shooting off different barricades and obstacles and whatnot, if you're just laying prone and shooting off your belly, most bipods are going to do pretty well. But when you start getting into shooting off of, the back of a truck, or off this barrel, or off this tire, it makes a difference. I think bipod's a big one. You got to decide whether or not, if you're not going to buy an out-of-the-box rifle, decide if you're going to do a stock or a chassis. And there's slight differences on the feel of stocks and chassis. But I think, bubble level. I would do. That's a big one. When you're shooting out at distance, 700, 800, 900 yards and further, the cant of your rifle. And this is something when I first started, I had no clue. I'm pointing, the crosshairs are on the target. There's no wind, and my bullet's like going, 0.3 of a mil to the right or left. And I'm like, what the heck
Chasing
is going on?
a non-existent wind.
Yeah, and then I adjust and I cant the other way my rifle, and then my rifle bullet goes off the other side, and I think it's wind or something like that. I'm just chasing it. So I think a bubble level is key. Bubble level, bipod. Get the best glass you can afford.